Welcome back to the channel. There are places the world has. Forgotten cities swallowed by silence. Castles standing like hollow. Skeletons of former empires. Ghost towns where the wind carries whispers of vanished lives and prisons. Left behind with their secrets locked in rusting cells, they are the abandoned landmarks of our world. Not gone, but not alive either. Suspended in a twilight between history and oblivion. These places do not die, so quietly they linger. Their walls remember, every crack in their stone. Every shattered window, every rotting beam is an echo of the lives that once filled them. And if you dare to walk among them, if you allow yourself to listen, you will hear the faint murmur of their untold stories. Cities are not supposed to vanish. They are meant to outlive their creators. To stand as monuments of human ambition, yet scattered across the world are entire cities abandoned, as though struck by a sudden spell, left to crumble under the weight of time in the cold north of Siberia. There is Pyramiden, once a thriving Soviet coal mining settlement. Its streets were lined with statues of Lenin, its buildings filled with families, its music halls echoing with life. But in 1998, the mine closed. The workers and their families were ordered to leave. They boarded ships and planes, carrying only what they could, leaving their homes, schools, and theaters frozen in time today. Pyramiden lies beneath the Arctic wind. Inside the school, textbooks still rest open on desks, as though the students had only stepped out for recess in the cultural center. Sheet music remains on stands, notes forever waiting to be played. The air smells of dust and decay. But it is the silence that presses hardest. It is a silence too heavy to be natural. The silence of a city that remembers being alive, and Pyramiden is not alone, half a world away. Deep in the jungles of Cambodia lies another city swallowed by time, Angkor. Once the beating heart of the Khmer Empire, Angkor was home to nearly 1 million people. Its temples soared above the trees, carved in devotion to gods and kings. But by the 15th century, it was abandoned. Famine, war, and shifting rivers drove its people away, leaving only stone behind now. Angkor stands like a skeleton draped in roots and vines. The jungle has reclaimed it. Wrapping its towers in strangling arms of green, tourists walk its ruins today. But when the sun dips low and the last footsteps fade, it is easy to imagine the city breathing again, shadows moving among the pillars, whispers carried in the wind, the echo of prayers that have not been spoken in centuries, forgotten. Cities are more than ruins. They are scars. They remind us that what we believe to be permanent can vanish in a moment, and in their silence, they hold on to the memories of those who once called them home. If forgotten cities are the bones of history, then Europe's abandoned castles are its restless spirits. They rise from the landscape like watchmen, their towers piercing the sky, their walls blackened with centuries of storms. Once they were strongholds of kings, battlegrounds of empires, and prisons for the unlucky. Now, they stand hollow, beautiful in their ruin, but uneasy in their silence. In Germany, on the banks of the Rhine, lies the crumbling husk of Burg Eltz's lesser-known cousin, Burg Reichenstein. Its walls have seen blood. Once held by robber barons, the castle became a nest of cruelty and greed. Legend says that when the emperor finally tired of their raids, the family was captured. 24 men were executed, their heads displayed on the castle walls as a warning. Today, the halls of Reichenstein are silent, but travelers speak of cold drafts and flickering lights that dance in its towers. Some say the condemned barons still walk there, whispering in voices carried by the wind, as though their deaths had not been enough to free them. Farther east, in the Czech Republic, stands Hauska Castle, perhaps the strangest of all, built in the 13th century. It has no kitchens, no fortifications, no signs of normal habitation. Instead, its chapel is built directly over a gaping hole in the earth. Locals called it a gateway to hell. Prisoners were once lowered into it, promised freedom if they survived the descent. The stories say they came back screaming, their hair turned white, their minds shattered. Today, the castle is abandoned more often than not, left to the crows and the ivy. But those who spend the night there tell of voices from the pit beneath, scratching sounds from behind the stone, and shapes that linger at the edge of candlelight in Scotland. The ruins of Slane's castle stand above the crashing sea, their jagged walls silhouetted against the gray horizon. It was here that Bram Stoker found inspiration for Dracula. After wandering its empty halls, now the waves hammer its cliffs, and the wind howls through its corridors, carrying with it the echoes of a novel and perhaps of something darker. Each castle is a monument to ambition and fear, power and downfall, but in their abandonment, they become something else entirely. They are not merely relics. They are echoes, guardians of forgotten tales, where stone remembers the screams and laughter it once contained when the last visitor leaves and the moon rises over their towers. These castles feel less like ruins and more like waiting things, places that still breathe, still hunger, still listen across the Atlantic. A different kind of silence lingers, not the silence of kings and empires, but of miners, settlers, and dreamers who vanished, leaving behind the skeletons of towns that once pulsed with life. In the mountains of California lies Bodie, once a thriving gold rush town at its height in the late 1800s. It was home to 10,000 souls. Saloons lined its streets, gambling halls glowed with oil lamps, and the nights rang with gunfire and drunken laughter. But the gold ran. Dry fires consumed parts of the town by the 1940s. Bodie was abandoned. Today it remains preserved in a state of arrested decay, peering through the windows. You can still see plates on tables, beds neatly made, shelves lined with dusty cans. It is as though the people vanished overnight, leaving their lives behind like a photograph burned into the walls. Visitors swear the air feels heavier there, as though the town itself resents being left behind. Some speak of footsteps echoing on the wooden sidewalks when no one is there, or the faint sound of piano keys drifting from the old saloon. And Bodie is only one of hundreds. In the deserts of Nevada, Rhyolite stands under the punishing sun. Its stone bank still towers above the sand, its walls empty, its vault door rusting in place. Nearby, the skeleton of a train depot marks where dreams of prosperity collapsed into dust. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, the silence is different. Here, beneath the earth, a fire has burned since 1962. Ignited in a coal seam that no one could extinguish, the flames spread beneath the town, belching smoke and poison gas through cracks in the ground. Houses were evacuated. Roads buckled and split open. Today, only a few residents remain, stubbornly clinging to the land as the earth continues to burn beneath their feet. Centralia is not just abandoned, it is being consumed. Devoured from below, ghost towns are America's silent sentinels, reminders of how quickly prosperity can wither, how fragile our footprints on the land truly are. They stand with hollow windows like staring eyes, watching as the living pass by, carrying with them the stories of those who never left. There are places that were never meant to be kind. Prisons are built to hold misery, to lock away society's darkest elements, or those simply caught in its grip. But when a prison is abandoned, when its bars rust and its gates fall silent, what is left behind is not just stone and steel. It is the residue of fear, despair, and violence, trapped in corridors that never truly forget. One of the most infamous stands in the heart of Philadelphia, Eastern State Penitentiary, opened in 1829. It was a fortress of reform designed not to punish, but to force men into silence and reflection. Prisoners were kept in solitary cells. Their meals slipped through small slots, their only light filtered through a single, narrow skylight that the hope was that isolation would bring redemption. Instead, it brought madness by the time the prison closed in 1971. Its Gothic towers and endless hallways had already gained a reputation. Visitors Today, walk through crumbling cell blocks where paint peels like shedding skin. Where iron doors hang half open as if waiting for occupants to return, they speak of shadowy figures that dart across corridors. Footsteps that echo from empty wings. It's whispers that seem to seep from the very stone. Some say the silence is worse than the sounds, an oppressive, suffocating silence that feels like the prison is holding its breath. Farther north in New York State lies Sing Sing's forgotten sibling, the now abandoned sections of the Dannemora prison. Here, executions once took place behind closed doors, their grim rituals hidden from the world, even decades after the last spark of electricity surged through its chair. The chamber remains intact, gathering dust. Those who've stepped inside describe a chill that no sunlight can dispel, as though the air itself recoils from what once happened there. Across the Atlantic, in France, another ruin tells its story, Montlec Prison in Lyon. During World War II, the Gestapo used its cells as holding pens for resistance fighters. Many were tortured within those walls. Many more were executed. Their names erased, but their screams carved invisibly into the stone. Today, the prison stands partly as a museum, partly as a ruin. But when the last visitor leaves, its narrow corridors are said to come alive with echoes of boots, of keys rattling, of cries that history never managed to silence. We began in forgotten cities, where life vanished in an instant. We walked through castles, where ambition turned to ruin. We wandered ghost towns, where prosperity collapsed into dust. And we entered prisons, where silence carries the weight of unspoken screams. What ties them all together is not simply abandonment. It is the presence of memory. These places are more than stone and timber. They are vessels. They hold stories too heavy to fade, stories etched into walls and whispered into the air. They are not alive, but they are not dead either. They exist in a liminal space, waiting for anyone willing to listen. The truth is, when a landmark is abandoned, it is never truly empty. Nature creeps in. Yes, ivy climbs, dust settles, wind howls through broken glass. But beneath that, there is something else. Something less tangible but undeniable. The past does not leave quietly. It clings. It lingers. It demands to be remembered. And when we stand in the shadow of these ruins, we step across their thresholds and breathe their air, we become part of their story too. We carry their echoes with us, adding one more layer to the palimpsest of memory they have always been. Perhaps that is why they unsettle us so deeply. Because in them, we see a reflection of ourselves, not only what we build, but what we leave behind. Not only our triumphs, but our failures. Not only our lives, but the silence that follows them. The untold stories of abandoned landmarks remind us of one truth above all. We may leave these places, but they never truly leave us. Asterisk, Pyramiden and Angkor are not the only cities lost to silence. All across the world, the skeletons of civilizations lie waiting to be remembered. Consider Pripyat, Ukraine. In April of 1986, it was a vibrant city, home to nearly 50,000 people. There were schools, playgrounds, a Ferris wheel waiting for its first May Day celebration. But then, the Chernobyl reactor exploded. Radiation swept invisibly across the land, and the people of Pripyat were evacuated in a matter of hours. They never returned. Today, the city remains frozen in time. Children's toys still sit in classrooms, shoes lie scattered in apartment stairwells. The Ferris wheel stands rusting and still, yet the silence is not empty. Birdsong is faint, the wind moves through shattered glass, and visitors speak of a presence that is difficult to name. Some say the city itself feels alive, as though its sudden abandonment left an open wound that never healed. Farther south, in Italy, lies Krakow, a medieval hilltop town that once thrived with life. Its stone streets echoed with church bells. Its houses clung to the cliffs like nests. But landslides and earthquakes made it unstable. In 1963, the last residents were forced to leave. Now, Krakow stands deserted, a maze of crumbling staircases and hollow houses. Film crews sometimes use it for movies, but when the lights leave, the town remains, watching silently over the valley below. And then there is Hashima Island, off the coast of Japan, known as Battleship Island for its shape. It was once one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Coal mines beneath the sea fueled Japan's industrial rise, and workers crowded into concrete apartment blocks. But when the coal ran out in the 1970s, so did the people. They left overnight, abandoning the island to the waves and the wind. Today, Hashima looks like a war zone, its buildings collapsing inward, its streets filled with debris. It is a ghost city stranded in the ocean, a monument to progress that was consumed by its own end. Forgotten cities. Like these remind us that even our grandest creations can fall. They are time capsules, sealed by catastrophe, waiting for us to listen to their stories. Asterisk Hauska, Slane's Reichenstein, their legends linger, but they are not alone. In Romania, beyond the famous walls of Bran Castle, lie the lesser-known ruins of Ponari Fortress. Perched high above a cliff, it was once home to Vlad the Impaler, the warlord who inspired the legend of Dracula. The fortress is crumbling now, its walls eroded by centuries of storms, but the climb up its 1,400 steps is said to be haunted. Visitors speak of heavy breathing behind them, footsteps that stop when they turn, and the faint sound of cries carried by the wind in Ireland. Leap Castle sits in ruin, though parts of it still stand. It is said to be the most haunted castle in the country, and with good reason. When workers renovated it in the 1900s, they discovered an oubliette, a pit designed as a secret prison. Inside were hundreds of skeletal remains, victims thrown into darkness and left to die. The castle's chapel is known as the Bloody Chapel, and countless visitors have reported figures moving in its shadows. The most infamous is the Elemental, a creature said to stink of decay and sulfur, a remnant of whatever horrors were once summoned within its walls. Even in England, where castles dot the landscape, abandonment tells its own tale. Dunstanburgh Castle, perched above the North Sea, is little more than jagged stone now. But when storms roll in, the walls seem to shiver with the weight of centuries. Local lore says a figure can sometimes be seen pacing the battlements, a shadow that should not be there, watching the waves crash against the cliffs. Abandoned castles are strange things. They are both beautiful and terrifying, their silence filled with both history and suggestion. And when night falls, their ruins feel less like relics and more like open mouths, as if the land itself is trying to speak through them. Asterisk. Not all ghost towns are relics of the 19th century. Some are far more recent. Take Kennecott, Alaska. Once a bustling copper mining camp, it thrived in the early 1900s. But when the copper ran out in 1938, the town was abandoned overnight. Today, its red wooden buildings still cling to the mountainside, preserved by the cold air. Inside, machinery rusts silently, tables still stand set for meals never eaten, beds remain with sheets pulled tight. It is as if the miners and their families stepped out for a moment and never came back. Or consider Garnet, Montana, a town preserved so perfectly that it feels like a museum left wide open. Walking through its saloon, you can almost hear laughter echo against the walls. But locals whisper that Garnet is not entirely empty. They tell of voices carried on the wind, of music faintly heard, of figures glimpsed in windows long after dark. Then there's Bannock, also in Montana, where the ghost of Henry Plummer, a sheriff-turned outlaw, is said to walk the gallows where he himself was hanged. Visitors claim to see him in the moonlight, standing silently, rope marks around his neck, staring at those who dare to enter his town. Ghost towns remind us of fragility, yes, but they also remind us of presence, because in their silence, they somehow feel louder than living towns. The absence of life becomes its own kind of voice. Asterisk if castles are haunted by ambition, and ghost towns by loss. Prisons are haunted by something heavier, despair. Even in their decay, their walls hold on to suffering like a sponge holds water. Take Alcatraz. The name alone conjures fear. The Rock, the island fortress off the coast of San Francisco. From 1934 to 1963, it held America's most dangerous criminals: Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, the Birdman Robert Stroud. It was a place designed to be inescapable, a concrete tomb surrounded by icy waters. When it closed, the cells were left empty. The corridors fell silent. But silence does not mean peace. Visitors speak of cold spots, of footsteps echoing in cell block D, the solitary wing. Some have claimed to hear sobbing from the cells or to glimpse men standing behind the bars, men who should no longer exist. Guides sometimes refuse to walk the block alone after dark in West Virginia. The Moundsville Penitentiary looms like a Gothic nightmare. Built in the 1800s, its stone towers resemble a castle, but inside it was a chamber of brutality. Executions were carried out here, hangings, then later the electric chair. Riots erupted, blood was spilled, and countless men died within its walls. When it closed in 1995, the prison was left to rot. Today, vines climb its walls, bats nest in its rafters, and tour groups wander its halls. But many don't stay long. They tell of shadows that stalk them, doors that slam without cause, and the sound of keys jangling in corridors where no guard remains. Farther south, in Cuba, lies Presidio Modelo, a prison unlike any other. Built in the 1920s, its panopticon design placed guards in central towers, able to see every prisoner at once. Thousands were crammed into its circular blocks, living under constant watch. It was here that Fidel Castro himself was imprisoned after his failed uprising in 1953. Today, the prison is abandoned, its massive circular wings collapsing into ruin. But when you stand in the center, you can still feel the weight of eyes, thousands of unseen gazes pressing in from the darkened cells. And in Russia, the frozen remains of the Vorkuta Gulag still stand. These were not prisons, as we think of them, but labor camps where political prisoners and criminals alike were sent to die in the snow. The barracks are collapsing, the watchtowers leaning, the barbed wire rusting into the tundra. But those who visit describe an emptiness so profound it feels alive, a silence that smothers, as though the earth itself refuses to let go of the suffering buried beneath its ice. Prisons are not simply abandoned. They resist being forgotten. Their walls do not forgive, and their silence is rarely empty. Even in ruin, they hold their prisoners close in memory, in legend, in something colder, darker, harder to name, asterisk, if castles are haunted by ambition and ghost towns by loss. Prisons are haunted by something heavier, despair. Even in their decay, their walls hold on to suffering like a sponge holds water. Take Alcatraz.